Bingo, bango, bongo. Welcome to another episode of Esoterica and Nonsense, a podcast where we discuss myths, legends, folktales, fairy tales, supernatural phenomenon, and religions from around the world. I'm your host, Annabelle. I'm a professor of bitchcraft and bitchery, sorcerer of the underworld, keeper of tropical fruits, an enthusiast of planet Earth. I'm here on a beautiful Tuesday. I have the windows open. I'm in the Yucatan. You're going to be hearing tropical birds. You're going to be hearing the breeze come in and out of the living room. You are going to be out here in the elements with me. Welcome. I hope you're doing wonderfully. Planet Earth is a fucking wild ride. Am I right? It's crazy out here. We have beauty, we have death, we have genocide, we have music, art. It's just visceral. It's intense. It hurts, but it hurts so good. I'm just trying my best, but I'm really excited today. Super excited. We are going to talk about Autobiography of a Yogi, written by Paramhansa Yogananda. I recognize that I am just a white boy from California, so forgive me for my horrible accent. But I'm actually rereading this book. I read it for the first time when I was 21, 22. Now I'm 29, almost 30, and it's one of the best fucking books I've ever read. I actually struggle with reading. My mind is really hyperactive and I get really distracted. And so even while I'm reading, I'm thinking about other stuff, But this is one of those books that is so consuming and so good that I end up wanting to read it, and I'm so focused because it's just that fucking good. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend. If you have read it, read it again. But basically this episode, I'm going to be talking about some of the chapters. But just to be clear, I highly recommend that you read this or reread it. Oh, sorry. My hand gestures are getting out of control, you guys. I really recommend that you visit this book because I'm really just going to be summarizing it, and I could not give it the same in-depth descriptions that Yogananda does, because he in fact writes it himself. So if you haven't listened to my episode Late Night Magic, I actually talk about this book with my friend Michael, but I really want to retell a bit of that story because years ago when I was 21, I was 21. I did a yoga teacher training, and it was so fucking problematic. It fucking sucked. I'm glad that I did it because I learned so much, but it kind of killed my interest in yoga because most of the faculty, not all of them, but a large portion of the faculty were white people who, I guess because they did yoga, they felt like a spiritual superiority to other people, but it was very clear that they hadn't really quote unquote done the work. I feel like a good example or a good word to describe these people is woke. They felt like they were woke, but they were not, and and it was just like a westernized bastardization of the yoga practice. And I'll spare you the details, but it turns out the leader of this organization is fully canceled. I think he may have been, I know he was indicted. I don't know if he ended up going to prison or not. One of the teachers was a disciple of Bikram, and she would always talk about how Bikram was amazing and all this stuff. And of course, now Bikram, all of those alleged, or not alleged, he went to court for being the worst. In a nutshell, I just was really turned off by the yoga community because it was just really exploitive. It was very much elitist. It was cult-like. It was weird. And essentially, a lot of the teachers were always dick riding this book. Oh, what was that noise? Maybe one of the neighbors doing construction. But yeah, they were always dick writing autobiography of a yogi. Autobiography of a yogi. You have to read it. You have to read it. Namaste. And I was like, fuck you. I'm not going to read this fucking book. So I kind of like, in my mind, like I X'd the book out, you know, I was like, I'm never going to read that. Fuck that book. I'm not going to fucking play your stupid games. But, not long after I did this teacher training, I was connected with a group of people in San Francisco, and that's where I met my friend Michael. We met at a party. He was wearing a crystal around his neck. I started chatting with him, and at the time, I had actually left my job. I had been growing weed illegally. This is still while weed was like still illegal in California, and I was like basically trapping, and I was working for this fucking I just had a really crazy job that was not safe and surrounded with questionable people, to keep it brief. But at that moment, after I quit, I was like, I still want to grow weed. I love growing plants. I love smoking weed. So I'm going to manifest a job where I work with all women who start me at $20 an hour, because at the fucking time, my ex-boss wouldn't pay me $20 an hour, and I was a manager working 7 days a week. But anyway, I manifested a job to start me at $20 an hour. I wanted to be with all women. I wanted them to feed me on the clock, and I wanted them to feed me organic foods. And what else did I manifest? Yeah, I think that was it. And I said that out loud, and I had a friend that was like good luck, basically. I'm actually not friends with that person anymore. See? Anyway, so I'm at a party. I meet Michael, and we talk about crystals for probably 15 minutes. And then I said, like, by the way, what's your name? What do you do? And he said, oh, I'm Michael. I grow weed. It's actually like a really cool place with all women. And so I gave him my phone number. I said, I am so good at growing weed. I work circles around other people. You need me. And when you need me, you're going to call me. And he's like, well, we're not hiring. So I don't think I'll be calling you anytime soon. And I said, no. You will be calling me, and you do need me. And I think 2 weeks later, it was January 9th. Is today January 9th? I know it was the day that David Bowie died. Let's Google it, because today is January 9th. Whoa, that's fucking crazy. David Bowie died on January 10th. How crazy is that? Didn't even think about that. So yeah, January 10th, Michael texted me and was like, actually, we're hiring. Can you come in for an interview? I got hired like the next week, and that was a beautiful, beautiful job. And that's a story for another day. But we ended up being raided by the police and on the spring equinox, and I prayed to the goddess Kali on New Year's that year. Anyway, I could talk forever about my life. Why am I telling this story? Because as I started working with Michael, he turned me on to a whole bunch of shit that I had already been interested in, but just didn't really have like a foothold in that world, you know? He turned me on to aliens. He turned me on to people who channeled aliens, psychics, like all kinds of crazy shit. And he turned me on to this book. And if you should listen to the episode. He tells the story, but he basically was walking on Cap Street in San Francisco. This street is pretty gnarly, full of warehouses, dumpsters, needles, like, you know, people sometimes shoot up on this street. The street is fucking gnarly. I think nowadays it's probably like pretty gentrified, but like that street historically is a pretty gnarly fucking street in the Mission. And he was walking down the street, and I kid you not, in the middle of the sidewalk, in perfect condition, finds this book. And it had kind of been in his orbital for quite a few years. He had never read it. And so after he found it in the street, he decided to read it. And that's when he started telling me about it. And that's when I was like, okay, fuck it. I'm going to read this book. Life-changing. Fucking life-changing. And I will say, now that I'm older, it's even better, because I think when I was younger, my ego was bigger. And I think at that time, I just like... I wasn't in the headspace for everything to sink in, if that makes sense. I was just in a different headspace. Let's just keep it at that. So without further ado, I want to chat about Autobiography of a Yogi. I'm going to hop around a little bit. I'm just going to talk about like this book, but I highly recommend, if this is your sign, order it now. Okay, so the book is written by Like I said, Paramhansa Yogananda. I'm going to call him Yogananda. That's what everyone seems to call him. And it's a nice little shorter nickname. So Yogananda was born in the 1890s. His name he was given at birth was Mukunda, and he was born in Gorakhpur, which is in the north of India, and it's bordering the Nepali border. I think it's like a couple hours, maybe like 3 hours from the Nepali border. Fun fact, I've actually been there on accident. I was in Nepal, and I decided to cross the border by bus. So I had to take like a bus from Kathmandu to like the middle of nowhere, transfer buses. Then I had to take like a rickshaw, like a bicycle took me to the border, and then from there I had to take a 3-hour Jeep ride. That's a fucking story, but long story short, like the town they took us to in that Jeep ride was Gorakhpur because it has a big train station. And fun fact, Gorakhpur allegedly is the kingdom that Prince Siddhartha, aka Buddha, was born in Gorakhpur. Now, it's not really like a metropolis city. It's like a very classic Indian city where there's not really a lot of like skyscrapers. There's not really a lot of like Western influence. I don't think anyone there spoke English, and it was pretty out there. It was pretty fucking out there. So yeah, Mukunda, aka Yogananda, was born in Gorakhpur, and he was one of 8 children, and his parents were very sweet. His dad worked for the railway, and his mom stayed home and watched the kids, and he had a pretty lovely childhood. But from the time he was born, literally from the time he was a baby, he had memories of being a monk in the Himalayas. And we're talking like a real baby. He remembers being a baby, and he remembers being super fucking uncomfortable. He was not vibing because he remembered having full control over his body and spirit, and being a human baby kind of fucking sucks. You know, his memories were him being frustrated, that he couldn't speak, being frustrated that he couldn't really move properly, being frustrated he couldn't wipe his ass. Like, it just was brutal. But as time went on and he started learning how to walk and learning how to speak, he remembers great joy and excitement over these like marvels of consciousness. And as he became older, he knew from the time he was a child that he wanted to be a monk. He wanted to be a swami. A swami is basically a monk in the Hindu tradition. And throughout his childhood, he had unbending faith in the knowing. Is that the word? He had faith in the fact that he would become a monk one day. And so his parents were actually disciples of a local guru named Lahiri Mahasaya. And this man was considered a saint. This man had the ability to perform miracles and to be in 2 places at once. Like, we're talking full on, well, I guess you could say teleportation, but I think a better way to describe it would be like dream body travel, or like multiversal manifestation. Basically, he could be in 2 places at once physically. So let's rewind a bit. Let's talk about how his parents became disciples of Lahiri Mahasaya. So the story goes that his father worked for the railway. Oh, don't you love the birds? It's so beautiful here, I'm telling you. So his father worked for the Indian Railway, and at one point, one of his employees asked to have a couple days off because he wanted to go visit his guru in Benares. And Benares is close to Gorakhpur. I'm not sure, like, let's say like 4 to 5 hours away on the train. So Yogananda's father is confronted with his employee who wants a couple days off to visit his guru. And his dad was like, well, no, you can't have time off. Like, this is your job. Like, what, sorry. And his disciple, or the employee who is the disciple of Lahiri Mahasaya, uttered, like, please, Guru, please manifest here so that I can be granted the time off to see you. And at that moment, Lahiri Mahasaya manifested out of thin air. An orb of light shows up in the room, and this guru manifests in the flesh and blood. And he says, like, why would you not offer this man days off? Like, why is it such a big deal? Like, be kind, And then, just like that, he dissolves into thin air. And at that moment, Yogananda's father says, I'm so sorry. Of course you can have days off, and please take me with you so that I can meet your guru and become one of his disciples. So sure enough, Yogananda's parents both take this train trip to Benares, and they meet with the saint Lahiri Mahasaya. And they become his disciples. They become initiated into Kriya Yoga, and they are loving disciples of him for many years. And eventually, when Yogananda's mom became pregnant with him, he blessed her pregnant belly. And when she had Yogananda, she brought him to the guru, and he called her over with the baby and said, this baby will become a monk, and this baby will be initiated into Kriya Yoga and will be a monk like me. And so even Yogananda's parents were told while he was a baby of his destiny. And as time went on, Yogananda as a kid was just so interested in the occult, in religion, in magic, in monks, and he actually tried to run away multiple times. He was trying to go to the Himalayas to be a monk, and because his dad worked for the railway, he was always able to, like, finagle train tickets, and so many times he tried to run away, but it never worked out. And eventually, when he was a teenager, he and his dad went on a little trip, and I think it was a business trip. I don't remember, but while they were on this trip, Yogananda woke up in the middle of the night, and his mother had manifested in front of him, and she said, Yogananda, or at the time I guess his name was Mukunda. She said, Mukunda, if you want to see me before I die, you need to come home right now. So he woke his father up, and he said, Mom is about to die. We have to go home. And again, this isn't like the 1890s. Like, we're talking almost like 1900, so that we don't have telephones yet widespread in India. And his dad's like, listen, like, your mom was in perfect health before we left. We're not going to go home. I'm on a business trip. So after a couple days, they go back home, and his mother had in fact died. And a year later, his Yogananda's oldest brother, Ananta, called him, and he said, listen, like, I have something I have to show you. Mother gave this to me on her deathbed, and she told me to tell you this a year after she had died. And basically, a saint had appeared, a saint had come to the house on her deathbed, and he said, like, are you the mother of Mukunda? And she said, yes. And he said, okay, I'm going to give you something. I'm going to give you this box, and you're going to give this to one of your kids, and you're going to tell them to give it to Mukunda a year after you die. And his instructions are that he's to keep this box, and a silver amulet will manifest out of thin air into this box. And the silver amulet will guide him to his guru, and just as the silver amulet appears out of thin air, it eventually will disappear. And those were the instructions. So here we go. A year later, Ananta calls in his brother Mukunda, who's now probably like 16, 17, and he gives him this box, and he tells him the instructions to meditate with it, and that a silver amulet will manifest from thin air, and that it will eventually lead him to his guru. So Yogananda is so excited, tears fill in his eyes, because this is like his dream. And so he starts meditating with this little box, and sure enough, this amulet manifests out of thin air, and he has the silver amulet. And eventually he ends up hearing about a guru. And okay, meanwhile, Lahiri Mahasaya dies while he's still young. Which reminds me, actually, this is such a good story. While Mukunda Yogananda was still very young, he got very deathly ill. And he was on his deathbed. His mom was still alive, and he was just doing really bad. And so at one point, his mother looked on the wall. They had a portrait of Lahiri Mahasaya, and his mom looked to it and she said, "May my son have no pain and may he be healed." And this portrait started glowing. It filled the whole room. Yogananda saw it, and in that instant, he felt no pain and was miraculously healed. So his parents were very devout followers and believers, and this kind of created like a legacy in Yogananda's life. But I just wanted to be clear that by the time Yogananda was like a kid, Lahiri Mahasaya had already died. So he was looking for his guru, and of course it couldn't be Lahiri Mahasaya. Eventually he found out about a guru not far from where he lived, and he went to go move in. But he just didn't vibe. Everyone was like super militant and kind of rude. Yogananda was spending extra time meditating every day, and people were just kind of assholes to him. And it was like a really weird vibe, and everything just was not it. And one of the days while he was at this hermitage, I don't know what the fuck to call it, but as he's at this like ashram basically with this guru, his amulet disappears. And he's devastated. But while he meditates, a voice in his head tells him to go on an errand with one of his friends at the ashram. And at that very moment, his friend calls from the kitchen like, "Yogananda, come down, we have to go on an errand." So sure enough, Yogananda follows his friend. They go to the market. They're running an errand for their guru. And in the market, they pass a tall man with dark eyes, and Yogananda feels like tingling. Like he just looks at this man and his body starts to tingle. And as they walk away, his body is starting to tingle less and less, and his feet start feeling heavier and heavier, almost like his feet are like glued to the ground. So he turns around and he starts walking back towards this man. And sure enough, the tingling starts coming back. His feet start feeling lighter and lighter, and magnetically he's guided back towards this man. And he looks the man in the eye, and the man starts having tears well up in his eyes. And he says, "My student, I've been waiting for you for so many years." And that's when Yogananda said, "Guru." Like they recognized each other and they embraced. And this became Yogananda's guru, Sri Yukteswar. And funnily enough, Sri Yukteswar had been a disciple of Lahiri Mahasaya. So this is all kind of like a full circle moment. So before I start talking more about Yogananda's life, I want to talk about Lahiri Mahasaya a little bit, because his fucking story is crazy, dude. Okay, so Lahiri Mahasaya was born in India, obviously. I think he was born in like the he died at 68. And I think he died right around the turn of the century. So he was born in like the 1840s, give or take. And he actually also worked for the railway. And one day, the railway called him to a town in the Himalayas, a town kind of in the middle of nowhere in the Himalayas. It was the northernmost railway station in Himachal. And this was when he was 33 years old, the Jesus age, as they say. So Lahiri Mahasaya gets summoned into the Himalayas for a short-term job. And while he's there, he has time while he works, but he has a bunch of free time. And he had heard legends of saints, of yogis and swamis living in the Himalayas with the abilities to perform miracles. And he was very curious about this. So he started hiking around the Himalayas, hoping to come across one of these beings. And one day, as he's walking by himself, he hears his name being like whispered in the wind. And he's like, what? So he starts following his name. He's hearing his name being spoken. And he comes across this area that has like all these caves. And out of one of the caves walks a man, a naked man. And he says, Lahiri Mahasaya, I've been calling you. I'm the one that has been calling you. Please follow me. And he invites him into this cave. And in the cave, there are 2 wool blankets and 2 begging bowls. And this man says, do you remember me? And Lahiri Mahasaya is like, no. Like, I don't fucking know you, dude. And he's like, oh, how could you not remember me? You spent your last life living here with me, and I've been waiting for you for so many years for you to return. And it was I that called you here to this northern town of the Himalayas so that we could reunite. And at that moment, he struck Lahiri Mahasaya on the chest. And after he struck him on the chest, memories started flooding in. He remembered living in this cave, meditating, teleporting, traveling across the time-space continuum with his friend. And he started crying. And he was like, oh my God, like, what the fuck? This is crazy. And this new friend, or I guess old friend, is known as Babaji. And Babaji is allegedly, according to the stories, a being that transcends time and space and has transcended beyond death. He can live forever. He needs no food, and he can travel across the universe in the blink of an eye and can manifest things out of the ether because he is truly an extension of the creator force and has ascended from all earthly needs. And this is how Lahiri Mahasaya became initiated. And in that moment, Babaji instructed him that he needed to clean his body. So he said, okay, you're going to go walk out to the stream in the mountain, and you're going to lay down next to the river and to clean your body, to let go of all of your earthly karma. And so he walks down to the river, and it's like, this is the Himalayas, you guys, so it's fucking cold. Lahiri Mahasaya lays down by the river, and he's not cold at all. He feels so comfortable. He's laying on rocks, and he is astounded by how comfortable he is. And then he starts seeing light in the horizon, and he's like, oh my God, is it already dawn? Like, have I been here all night? And at that moment, a man walks up to him and he says, Babaji is summoning you, follow me. And Lahiri Mahasaya asks, is it already dawn? Like, what time is it? And this man says, no, it's actually midnight, but Babaji has manifested a palace for you to satisfy some of your past karma. So he follows this man. They're walking through the Himalayas, and sure enough, they see a giant palace made out of gold. Oh shit, hold on. Fuck. My foot just fell asleep, you guys. It's pretty brutal. Oh. During the most interesting part of the story. Okay. We're good. Okay, so Lahiri Mahasaya and this disciple are in the Himalayas, and they come across this giant golden temple that's adorned with rubies and sapphires and jewels, and it's like unbelievable. And Babaji is waiting for them. They walk inside. There's this giant ballroom with a gold throne, and Babaji is sitting in the throne, and he smiles and he greets them, and he says, this is for you, Lahiri, because this was something that you wished in your past, to witness a grand palace, and so I am quenching your thirst. I think he said something like, I'm quenching your thirst across lifetimes. You will not thirst for anything again, because here tonight I'm addressing all of those wishes. And one thing that they mention a lot in this book, that desires and wishes is what creates karma. And so part of the life of the monk is being desireless, because then you're not creating future karma for yourself. All of your knots are tied, all of your sentences are dotted, So here we are in this golden palace, in this golden ballroom, And Lahiri Mahasaya is like, has this palace always been here? Like, what the fuck? And Babaji explains, like, no, I manifested this out of thin air for you as a gift. And just as I manifested it, it will disappear. And so they sit in this ballroom, they have food, they eat. And at one point, Babaji says, okay, close your eyes. So Lahiri Mahasaya closes his eyes. And then he says, okay, open them. And as he opens them, they're now sitting in the Himalayas on rocks with nothing around them but mountain. And he truly is fucking dumbfounded. He's like, what the fuck? This is crazy. And on that night, he's like, Babaji, like, I'm so happy to be reunited with you. Like, I want to live with you. I want to create my life with you. And Babaji said, no, Lahiri, this is not your life path. You manifested as a human being in the human world to be a householder. What he means by a householder is like an earthly man, to own a home, to have a family. And at that point he did. He had a wife, he had kids. And so Babaji said, part of why you're here is to answer the prayers of these humans. Babaji was like, I'm not really human. I live in seclusion. I don't live in society. I can dematerialize at will. You are going to be answering the prayers of people who are looking for a guru, who are looking to be shown the way of how to be a householder and to be a man of God. And so at that, he says, you're going to go back home and you're going to do your meditations. You're going, and I'll always be with you, but you're going to be a householder. And Lahiri Mahasaya says, well, I can't go home. I was just transferred to this new branch. And Babaji smiled and he said, I called you here. Once you reach a certain point of consciousness, all the minds of humanity and all the consciousnesses are accessible. So I planted the idea for you to move here. So sure enough, Lahiri Mahasaya goes back down the mountain. He'd been gone for 3 days. And when he gets back, everyone was worried about him. But they also said that it was a mistake that they had ordered him there, and actually the job would be for someone else. So Lahiri Mahasaya went back home to Benares, and he became a local saint. And very soon, he started receiving a pension from the railway, so he stopped working, and he became a local guru. He spent his life in his front entryway entertaining disciples, and he never slept. And he performed many miracles, such as healing people from crazy diseases, appearing in 2 places at once, being able to heal people from a distance, and he became a local saint. And Sri Yukteswar, who is now Yogananda's new guru, he was also a disciple of Lahiri Mahasaya. And the story is just so fucking magical. So let's go back to our young Yogananda. Yogananda's now like 17, 18-ish. He's met Sri Yukteswar in the market, and Sri Yukteswar says that he lives very close to Kolkata. And funnily enough, Yogananda's family had been living in Kolkata for the last few years, and he laughed because he spent his whole childhood trying to run away to the Himalayas, and sure enough, his guru was just 20 miles away from him this whole time. And so he goes back home, and he ends up moving to this new house where Sri Yukteswar lives, and he's so excited to be his new disciple. He barely graduated high school. Yogananda's like, not interested in school. He's not interested in the earthly pleasures. Like, he's trying to be a monk. And on day 1 at this new hermitage, fucking Sri Yukteswar says, okay, Yogananda, you're gonna go to college. You have to go to college. And Yogananda starts like crying. He's like, I don't want to fucking go to college. Like, what the fuck? I found you. Like, I don't want to go to fucking college. What? And Sri Yukteswar says, no, one day you are going to be going to the West. You're going to be going to America and Europe. And it's going to be very important for you to have a college degree. So with that, Yogananda started going to college while he was studying under Sri Yukteswar. And he had a bunch of really funny miracles happen because he was barely going to school. He was barely paying attention. And he was just passing his finals by what is the saying? By the skin of his teeth? I hate that saying. He was passing the test by a hair. And at one point, it was his like finals to get his like degree, and he was so fucking nervous because he had just not really been studying. He'd been not doing the work. And he was freaking out, and he was telling his guru, like, I don't think I'm going to pass. Like, I think I'm fucked. And his guru was like, why lose faith now? Like, you've always had faith in God. Why lose faith now? Go talk to one of your classmates. And I forget his name, but he mentions the name of one of his classmates. So sure enough, Yogananda seeks out one of his classmates, and his classmate starts tutoring him, but he starts tutoring him on very specific stuff. His classmate's like, I'm pretty sure we're going to be tested on this and not that. And so while they're studying in the dorms, all these other students start listening because, you know, they kind of laugh at Yogananda for being a monk and not really being present. And so they're interested in his scholastic journey. And they start saying, like, don't listen to your friend. Like, he's not really tutoring you on what we're going to get tested on. But as he started going to his finals, everything that they were tested on was exactly what his friend told him. And one of his exams was in Bengali, in Sanskrit. And he hadn't really been studying Sanskrit, and that's hard to cram, like a language. And he was like, fuck, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so while he was walking to his final, he decided to switch up his pathways, and he walked through an empty lot, and on the ground of this empty lot, he found a piece of paper that was a Sanskrit verse that was translated into Bengali, which was his preferred language. And so by studying this verse, this song in Sanskrit, he was able to pass his exam. And just like little miracles like that, which are so super cute. So I want to talk about some more like really interesting and funny tidbits of the book, which I love. So one of them is about Sri Yukteswar, who is Yogananda's guru, and he was known to have like a very regal and calm presence, and very at peace. And apparently there was a story one day where like a cobra came out of the jungle with a flared hood, and it was like slithering so fast. So these are all the signs that this cobra is like pissed off. And it slithered right up to Sri Yukteswar. So meanwhile, everyone else, all these disciples are freaking out. They're fucking scattering like ants, you know, everyone's like running away. But Sri Yukteswar is just sitting in the garden, and this snake comes right up to him, and they look eye to eye. And he just smiles at the snake, and the snake's hood flares down, it relaxes, it then just slithers back into the jungle super calmly and super slowly. And that story just really strikes me because part of their lineage is just not holding stress in the body, being in full trust, being in union with the creator source. And I just love that. And then another story that I really loved was after Yogananda's mother died. He was very heartbroken, obviously, you know, like his mom had always been his champion, and his mom had always believed in him and seen him as a future monk, and, you know, had shown him all life's pleasures. And he was so sad after his mom died that he started, you know, praying to God. And eventually the goddess Kali came down, the mother goddess. And she said, like, Yogananda, do you not see? Like, this is not your real mother. I'm your real mother. I've been your mother across lifetimes. I've been your mother for thousands, millions of years. I will always be your mother. I am your eternal mother. I love you. Oh, how beautiful is that? We love the goddess Kali here on this podcast. If you haven't listened to the Kali episode, highly recommend. One thing I love about Yogananda is that he speaks of Kali as the mother goddess, and that just really touches me because she's my favorite goddess, and I feel like that's the face that is like less talked about besides her face of destruction, and it's just fucking iconic. Oh, the dogs are barking. Okay, so let's keep talking about Sri Yukteswar. This is one of my favorite stories. I think I may have mentioned this in my previous episode where I spoke with Michael, but it's just worth mentioning because it's so fucking good. And I think I got some details wrong. So there is a chapter of this book, I think it's one of my favorite chapters, about these cauliflower. And Yogananda grows like 3 or 4 cauliflowers for Sri Yukteswar, and he puts all this effort in. These are beautiful cauliflowers, and he wants to give them as a gift to Sri Yukteswar. And he puts them in a basket under his bed, and he stays in the attic room. So this is like at the top of this building. It's a giant building. And one day they go on their morning walk on the beach. And this was a second location that his guru had not far from Orissa. And okay, so they're on their walk with the beach. All the disciples are walking on the beach, and Sri Yukteswar perks up and he says, you didn't lock the side door. And Yogananda says, no, I definitely did. I always lock it. I locked it. And Sri Yukteswar said, no, you didn't. And Yogananda's like, no, I know that I did. So after their walk, they're on the lane walking back towards the house, and they see this madman walking towards them. Like, this guy is like flailing his arms like he's a nut, just being like a full-on nut. But out of nowhere, this man like perks up, and he changes his course, and he cuts down through this side alley to their house. And so Sri Yukteswar tells everyone to stop and watch. And after a few minutes, this crazy man shows up again holding a cauliflower. And he just goes right on his merry way. So at that point, Yogananda runs into the house. He runs up the stairs, runs into the attic. And literally on his bed, he had gold jewelry. He had all kinds of treasures in his room. And he looks under the bed. And sure enough, out of his basket, one of the cauliflowers was stolen. And so he goes up to Sri Yukteswar and he's like, what the fuck was that about? And Sri Yukteswar laughed and he said, well, I thought I would teach you a little lesson. Like, you didn't lock the door. And the mind is like a radio. It's like a radio station. And once you start ascending and connecting with the creator spirit, you have the ability to tune into different stations. So I just planted the idea in his mind to take a cauliflower to teach you a lesson. And also, like, it's just one cauliflower. And also, mind you, Sri Yukteswar hadn't even known about the cauliflowers, or I guess I should say Yogananda never told him. But of course, he, with his abilities, could sense that the cauliflowers were there. And another really cute tidbit about Sri Yukteswar is that when Sri Yukteswar was young and a disciple of Lahiri Mahasaya, at one point he met Babaji, and I'm trying to remember what happened. I think, yes, okay, so Sri Yukteswar had gone to a meeting, I think it was in Rishikesh or somewhere else, but there was like a place where all of these like saints were supposed to convene. So disciples from all over India come once a year to go like see saints. But Sri Yukteswar was not very impressed. Like, a lot of people felt very fake to him, and like, oh my God. In his defense, I don't remember if it was Rishikesh or not, but I've been to Rishikesh. Rishikesh is where the Beatles went when they went to India in like the 60s or 70s or whatever. Fuck Rishikesh. And I don't think Rishikesh has always been that way, but it's like now a hub for spiritual tourism. And it was just so like gross. Like, it was just full of like blonde people with like ratted dreads wearing like tourist Indian clothing, like clothing that Indians don't wear, but like are from the movies, like Aladdin pants and stuff. And like, it was just so weird. And I even met Babas there. Like, there was Babas on the street smoking out of a chillum. So I was like, I really wanted to smoke with these Babas. It was like my dream to like smoke with Babas. So I sat next to them and I was like, I'm going to roll them a joint. So I start rolling a joint on the sidewalk with these Babas. And they're like telling me like, oh, you shouldn't be smoking joints because the papers are like really bad for you. Meanwhile, this fucking Baba is emptying a gold flake cigarette. So gold flakes are like the cheapest cigarettes in India. They're like, I don't know. It's like the equivalent of smoking like Pall Malls or like Parliaments or like Newports. Like, that's how cheap they are. They taste more like a Camel Gold, but like these are the cheap, like they taste so bad. Okay. So this Baba is lecturing me about not smoking papers while he is emptying a fucking gold flake into his chillum and smokes like a moke bowl out of his fucking chillum with a lighter. Like, he doesn't even have hemp wick or some shit. And I was like, he was like, yeah, like he like offered for me to smoke it. And I was like, I'm not going to smoke your moke bowl while you're lecturing me about papers. Like, what the fuck? It was so weird. So anyway, that was my experience in Rishikesh, dude. So back to Sri Yukteswar. Sri Yukteswar is at this like spiritual convention. He's like not impressed. The vibe is weird. He just feels like everyone's a phony. And he's on a bridge and this man starts talking to him. And this man is like, oh, like, what do you think of it here? And Sri Yukteswar is like, I don't know. I think this is kind of weird. I think it's kind of fucked up. Like, I don't really like it here. And this man, who actually is Babaji, but Sri Yukteswar doesn't know that. This man is like, well, there are some people here that are worth seeing, and that makes the trip worthwhile. And then he says, you know, you're going to be an important guru because one thing about India and Hinduism is that like we have, it's for everyone. It's not just for people from the East. And one day people from the West will get our teaching sent to them. And he says, one of your disciples will go to the Americas and teach these things. And so a few days later, Sri Yukteswar goes back to Benares. He sees his guru, Lahiri Mahasaya, and Lahiri Mahasaya says, like, how was your meeting with Babaji? And Sri Yukteswar is like, what? What are you talking about? Babaji? I didn't meet Babaji. And at that moment, Babaji manifested in the room. And Babaji laughed and he said, I've been in this room the whole time. I'm hiding in broad daylight and you didn't see me. Like, you need to work on your vision. And at that point, Sri Yukteswar gets on his knees and he bows and he bows and he says, like, please forgive me for not recognizing you. And Babaji just laughs. And actually, oh my God, they have this friend. I don't remember his name right now. But Babaji and Lahiri Mahasaya have this friend who I'm obsessed with. He's like so amazing. And he is like he's a monk and he's like on par with them. Like, we're talking can like dissolve into thin air and reappear. He's 300 pounds. He doesn't eat food. He never eats, but he's 300 pounds by choice. And he doesn't wear clothes. And so he is like seen all over India, sometimes like floating above the Ganges, sometimes underneath the water. Sometimes people see him like floating above rooftops. Like, he's just like a full on, like, I'm kind of obsessed with this guy. But apparently, I think in like Agra or something, he was known to be arrested all the time because he was always naked. And so the police were always arresting him for being naked. And then they would like lock him in a cell. And then in the middle of the night, they would just find him up on the roof, like meditating, and they'd lock him up and he'd be like, oh yeah, you gotta lock me up. And they'd lock him up again. And then again, he would just be on top of the roof because this guy could like fucking dissolve. Like, this guy's amazing. I'm obsessed with him. I'm obsessed with that guy. So these are like the homies of Lahiri Mahasaya. Like, these people are like full on, like basically living life like it's a dream world. Like, it's sick as fuck. And Sri Yukteswar was like, you know, obviously a disciple of Lahiri Mahasaya, but is like, you know, witnessing some of these miracles. And some of the coolest parts of this book are actually hearing some of these great masters interpret the Bible. It's so fucking fascinating. And at one point, Sri Yukteswar talks about Genesis. He talks about the Adam and Eve story. Oh my gosh, did you hear that? That was like a really weird, like, internal weird burp. Okay. So Sri Yukteswar at one point is like breaking down Genesis. And he talks about Adam and Eve being allegorical hemispheres of like humanity, like the woman being the creative force, the subtle force, and the man being the action self, the visible self. But really, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden referred to when humanity had not yet manifested itself fully viscerally. The ability to manifest, the ability to not have to eat, the ability to create a baby as a thought form, to not actually have to to not participate in like the earthly pleasures. They were like energy beings, much like the saints, right? Being able to like disintegrate, to teleport, to be in two places at once, not needing to eat. Like this was like the consciousness that Adam and Eve was in. But the snake, which is a symbol of the Kundalini energy, the snake that lives in the spine of all people, the feminine self, which is the internal self, the intuitive self, was told by the snake, the Kundalini energy, to eat from the tree of life. And what this was about was to like dip, to try out the earthly pleasures, to try eating, but also to try sex, right? And the intuitive self then has the action self, the masculine self, try. And that is when they became aware of their nakedness and were cast from the garden. But what this was all about is that this garden is a symbol of heaven. It's a symbol of the astral plane. And by now engaging in worldly acts, by having sex, by having food, it's not that they're evil, it's that they decided to descend onto earth. And that the ability to be between both realms is possible for all humanity, but it takes discipline and it takes deprivation of certain things, which I thought was such a fascinating fucking interpretation. Also, you can go on Yogananda's website. I think it's called Yogananda Harmony, and there's like a blurb where Yogananda actually does do some Bible interpretations. And in the book, at one point, Sri Yukteswar asks Yogananda to do Bible interpretations in the West. And it's really amazing and enriching because so much of the Bible is influenced by Hindu culture, and it's something that's very forgotten. Let us not forget that Jesus definitely fled to Egypt, but also Northern Africa. The whole Northern African subcontinent had a lot of trading and cultural influence from India. But also, interestingly, when I was in India, a lot of people acted like it was common knowledge that Jesus trained in India with a guru. That was just something that was just circulating around India. Like, yeah, everyone knows that Jesus grew up in India, duh. And I kind of loved that. Obviously, like, we don't even know if Yeshua was a real guy. We don't really know, like, we'll never know. But in India, they say it's like a done deal. But there's things in Christianity that we don't even recognize are from the Hindu culture. A great example is baptism. The idea of baptizing with water is actually a Hindu tradition, as water is a purifier, but also like the essence of life. And so things that we think of as inherently Christian do come from Indian traditions, regardless if Jesus physically trained in India or not. And he could have trained with an Indian master somewhere else. Just saying. Just fucking saying. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to tell a couple more stories, but I don't want to give away the whole book, like it's worth reading. And again, I'm just like summarizing, but another one of my favorite chapters is about a boy, Kachi. Hold on, let me just double check because out of respect, I want to say his name right. I'm going to look at the table of contents, you guys. I'm looking at the table of contents. Kashi. Okay. So Yogananda ends up starting a school which he calls the school at Ranchi. And this was a school, it's such a cool vision. It's a school that was designed to not only teach children about academics, but also for them to spend time outside in nature and to teach them Kriya Yoga. Fuck yes, fuck yes, fuck yes. And I was mentioning, I don't think I mentioned it in this episode, but Kriya Yoga is about task. Kriya meaning like task from God. And so this would be different than what we just consider yoga, which I now call Pilates, because most people don't really practice yoga. Kriya Yoga is about breath work. It's about physical tasks. It's about physical disciplines, which lead you closer to God. So it could be observing things like fasting. It could be observing things like certain breath practices. It could be observing things like doing yoga asanas. But it's the 8-step path to connection with God, and eventually to be able to exit the body, to combine with the union of the universe. Okay, so anyway, this school that Yogananda starts is about teaching boys about academics, teaching them about nature, and having them be practicing Kriya Yoga. So fucking cool. And within a couple years, his school like triples in size because everyone wants to send their kids there. It's like so fucking amazing. And one day he's out hanging out with some of the boys. And these boys are like asking him like, what, like, am I going to be a monk? One of the boys says, am I going to be a monk when I get older? And Yogananda says, no, you're going to marry a beautiful bride and have kids with her. And one of the other kids is like, what about me, Yogananda? Will I be a monk? And without even thinking, Yogananda's like, no, you're going to die really soon. And so this boy's like, what? And the boy starts freaking out, and Yogananda's like, oh my God, like it just came to his mind. He wasn't even thinking. And he said, okay, like, and so this boy started begging him, like, please help me survive. I don't want to die. I want to be a monk, like, please. And Yogananda was like kind of trepidatious because, you know, that's like a really big ask. And finally the boy's like, please promise me that no matter what, even if I die, that you're going to find me and bring me back to the school. Promise. And Yogananda's like, oh my God, that's like a really big ask. But he's like, okay. He's like, fine, I promise you. Like, you know, how can you turn down like I think this kid was like 12. He's like, how can I turn you down? Of course. But he says, listen, like, if you listen to me and you follow my instructions, like, you don't necessarily have to die, you know? So what he tells the boy is like, listen, no matter what, stay at the school. If your parents come or someone tries to have you leave the school, just stay at the school. Like, I'll protect you. But at one point, Yogananda had to go on a business trip. So he tells the boy, Kashi, he's like, listen, Kashi, no matter what, don't leave the school. Just stay at the school. Like, you'll be safe. You'll be protected. Like, we'll make sure of it. So sure enough, like a day after Yogananda leaves, Kashi's dad shows up. And he's like, okay, Kashi, I'm taking you away for a couple of days because we have a family celebration. And Kashi is like, no, I'm not leaving. I'm staying. And his dad is like, no, I'm taking you and you don't have a choice. And Kashi's like, please, like, I have to stay. And finally, his dad was like, I'm going to call the police. So you're coming with me either way. And so Kashi, of course, didn't want him to call the police. They're like at a sanctuary school. So he goes with his dad. And as Yogananda comes back from his big business trip, he is in Calcutta and he's crossing a bridge and sees Kashi's family wearing their funeral clothes, which are all white, and they're burning a body next to the Ganges. So he storms up to them and he knows immediately that Kashi has died. And Yogananda kind of loses his shit and he's like, what? How dare you, you bitch? I'm paraphrasing. And it turns out that he had some contaminated water and he died of cholera. And Yogananda's just fucking disgusted. He's just like, God, like, fuck you guys. And of course, like, his dad is super ashamed and super sad. And Yogananda's like, okay, I owe it to Kashi. Like, I'm going to find Kashi and bring him back to the school. And so months go by and Yogananda's meditating all the time. He's trying to find Kashi and he's not hearing any responses from the universe. And so he just keeps sending out messages like, I'm looking for you, Kashi. I'm looking for you, Kashi. I'm looking for you. And one day when he's in Kolkata, he's with some friends and out of nowhere, he hears Kashi's voice in his head, and he says, "I'm here." And his whole body starts tingling, and he's like, okay, bet, like Kashi, and 3 months had gone by, so he's like, okay, this makes sense. Like, he probably took a break, was with the Cosmic Union, but now he's back in someone's womb, and like, I'm gonna find fucking Kashi. So Yogananda lifts his hands in the air like a crazy person, and he starts spinning in circles, and everyone's looking at him like he's nuts, but he's dressed like a monk, so, it's typical shit you would expect from like a swami. He's spinning in circles with his arms in the air, and he notices that when he faces a particular direction, his hands are just tingling. And the street that he's facing is called Serpentine Lane. Don't you fucking love that? So he starts following his tingles, and he walks, just following the sensations in his body, and eventually he gets to a gate. And he knocks on the gate, and a woman answers. She is an employee of the master of this house, and he says, like, I need to talk to your boss. So she calls down her boss. He's this man, and this man is like, hi. And Yogananda's like, listen, do you have a pregnant wife right now who's about 3 months pregnant? And this guy was like, yeah. And Yogananda's like, listen, I have to tell you this story. So he tells him about Kashi. And he explains what Kashi looks like. And he's like, I bet you that your kid is going to look like Kashi. He's going to be fair-skinned. He's going to have bushy eyebrows. From a young age, he's going to be interested in monastic values and Hinduism. And I implore you to send him to my school for boys when he's of age. And so when the boy is born, the parents name him Kashi. And when he's of age, they send him to the school. And at that point, Yogananda was actually already in the United States. But at one point, Kashi actually wrote him a letter and said, I really want to become a monk. I'm looking for a guru. And so Yogananda set him up. He referred him to a particular guru, and he became a disciple of this man. I just love that story. Yogananda's so magic. Actually, another really interesting story from that school was a story that Yogananda told about a deer, and they had this baby deer that all the kids at the school were just obsessed with. It was so cute. It was just like a little baby, and everyone adored it, and they looked after it. And one day, Yogananda had work to do, so he fed the deer early, but he instructed the boys not to overfeed it because it would get sick. So he goes out and he does his business, and when he comes back, the baby deer is deathly ill because they overfed it all day. And that night, Yogananda's crying. He prays to God. He says, please spare this deer. I want this deer to live. And at that moment, the deer started feeling better. And so Yogananda was so happy. All the boys at the school were so happy. And that night, when Yogananda went to bed, the deer appeared to him in a dream. And the deer said, listen, like, I've already moved on. You're so attached to this earthly realm that you thought you were being kind to me by moving on. But like, I'm asking for permission to let me move on. I've already made peace, and I'm ready to move on to the next realm. And at that point, Yogananda said, yes, like, I give you permission. And he wakes up in the middle of the night, and sure enough, the deer wobbles and collapses to its death. And he reflects that things die naturally at their given time. And sometimes we feel like we want to fight death and we want to survive forever. And sometimes it is a natural part of the karma to die, and there is a natural time, and our consciousness doesn't die. We're eternal, but sometimes we get so wrapped up in saving the body that we forget about letting things flow naturally. And that actually also reminds me about a part in the book where Yogananda, this is now in like the 1910s, the 15s, and the 20s, but in like 1915, I think, he goes to a movie theater and he watches a newsreel of World War I, and he just sees, terrifying shit. So he leaves the theater, he's very distressed, and he basically asks God, like, why is this happening? Like, how can we allow this to happen? And so as he meditates, he starts seeing things in his mind that are so much worse than he saw at the movie theater, like horrible deaths. I mean, truly genocide. And he starts crying, and he actually enters the body of a man in a ship, and the ship sinks, and he swims to a shore, and he gets shot in the chest, and he dies. And he wakes up as Yogananda, but he truly had entered this man's consciousness and had died with him in World War I. So he's so confused, and he asks God, like, how is this possible? How is war and genocide possible? And God answers him. And God says, like, this drama, the earthly drama of quote unquote bad versus evil and light versus dark, is what keeps the universe in balance. And this drama that you see of war is both real and imaginary. Your life on earth is both real and imaginary. And part of this fight, this eternal fight, is a balancing force of nature, and is less, it's less real than you could ever imagine. And Yogananda was like, I'm still really depressed about this. And basically, like, I guess what God was saying is, like, if you boil everything down to energies, like, nothing is ever destroyed or created, and that everything is in fact eternal, and the human drama is nothing but a dream. And I mean, truthfully, when I hear that, part of it is comforting, but the other part of it, because I'm in human form, isn't comforting. Like, I'm still not cool with war. I'm still not cool with genocide. It fucking sucks, and it's depressing, and it's horrible, and it's horrifying, and it's scary. But one thing that Sri Yukteswar talks about actually in the book is that consciousness goes through these great cycles. I think they're like 26,000 year cycles, and they're split up into 13,000 years. There's like an ascension and a descension. And allegedly right now we're going through a period of ascension, and we have about 2,000 more years, and then we're going to reach a place where violence is going to start disintegrating, and humans as a collective are going to start ascending into the higher realms, and basically being able to do these things which we consider saintly or associate them with superpowers. But I think about this all the time, like, and I think I mentioned this a lot, but like, there's like an obsession in human culture about superheroes and about like witches and wizards and sorcerers and like all of these like extra powers. And I think it's so fascinating because I think it does come from like deep memories within our DNA that like this is part of the human legacy. These abilities are part of the human legacy, and we think they're unattainable or make-believe or like only for the few, but they're actually for everyone. It just takes the time and the discipline and the focus, and sometimes it takes years. One thing that they mention in the practice of yoga is that in a human consciousness, it takes 1 million years for one to ascend. However, if one is to practice Kriya Yoga, they could, if they were to do 8 hours of Kriya Yoga a day for 10 years, they could move through 1 million years. So yeah, basically in a 10-year period, you could work through 1 million years of consciousness, which is an interesting thought. Just saying. Yeah, I mean, from my own experience, I was lucky enough as a kid that I didn't have a lot of parental supervision, but I was very safe. So I had a lot of time as a child. I mean, most of my time as a child, I was unsupervised and alone. And some of my earliest memories were me in the garden, like talking to plants and talking to the stars and talking to aliens. And there was a deep knowing within me that this was not my first time on earth. I didn't remember my last times, but I remembered being frustrated by how little I remembered. I remember being frustrated that like there was no adults to guide me, and that it seemed to make believe that past lives were real, or it seemed to make believe that magic was real. I remember being very frustrated with the state of humanity and knowing that it was like ultimately a little bit archaic or like medieval, the state that we were living in. And I just remember being like, where is my family? Like, where is my real family? Like, where are my real parents? Where are my real friends? Like, where the fuck are they at? Because like, I just remember being so disappointed, kind of. And I just feel so lucky that because of my lack of supervision, that piece of myself never went away. So anyway, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I've been practicing like manifestation and visualization from such a young age. And truly, like everything I manifest always comes real. I mean, even the fears. And what I focus on always comes true. And so from personal experience, like this book rings very true to me. And I think that a thing that isn't talked about enough anymore in modern culture, and I think like the tribal consciousness that we have started to forget, is that this reality is in fact a dream. And our dreams are equally, if not more important than this reality, because our consciousness is playing out a manifestation drama in every single second. And what we believe and what we think and what we assume is actually creating the world around us. And so just little things that we don't pay attention to can actually be changing the time-space continuum. And that's just something to think about. But anyway, I feel like I've been rambling. I feel like I've been talking forever. I feel like this is a good place to stop. This is just like a dip into this book. There is so much about this book that is incredible. I highly recommend you reading it, rereading it, listening to it on audiobook, whatever you need to do. It's pretty crazy, and it's amazing. And it's a great reminder of how beautiful life can be, especially if you choose to pursue things that are spiritually fulfilling. And yeah, how beautiful it is to be a human, how magical it is, and that we come from a legacy of ancient masters, and it's accessible to everyone. It really is. So anyway, thank you for listening. I'm actually starting a guided meditation channel on my Patreon. You should check out my Patreon. The link is in the description. I also have merchandise for Esoterica and Nonsense, as well as some of my other art. The link is also in the description. Yeah, I am a beginning podcast. I really want to make more content. If you like this podcast, please consider making a monthly donation. But even just showing up, I just am so appreciative. So appreciative. This is a wild, wild world. So thank you for showing up here on planet Earth at this time. We need more loving, caring, kind people. And it's just a dream. Don't stress about it. Believe in yourself. Thank you so much. I love you. Over and out.